This is Shared Silence, 2 crows on a 40 by 40 centimeter deep canvas, and honestly I think I'm slightly obsessed. Welcome to my channel, painting, art journaling and creative inspiration, so let's create together. And welcome back to my studio. So glad you are joining me today for another video, and in case you are new here, you are welcome too. Yes, it is another crow painting. It is again a mixed media painting where I did add collage, I did mark making, I did several layers of backgrounds, and then I did sketch in, which I did off camera. I did sketch in my crows and then painting the crows and repainting the background. That's an unusual thing for me. I never start with the final background color, just to make the colors really rich and deep, and some things are peeking through, some are not. So that's what this painting is about. Supplies I have used is very simple. I did use acrylic paint, I did use collage pieces from my own channel, jelly prints, can't talk today. I did use mark making, I did use like the Stabilo Voodoo and things like that. And then did paint my crow with, did sketch my crows with just ordinary chalk, blackboard chalk, before I started painting in. My usual step in the end is going over with the oil-based charcoal, but this time I also did use those Sennelier oil pastels and the Neo pastels to give the final touch. You're also going to see me using this tool for those stripes. I did slightly alter, no, I did alternate quite a bit, one of those painter's rollers to make those stripes. Now, as always, it is a time lapse. I did edit out quite a bit of parts because it took me about 2 hours just painting, not counting drying times or things like that, or me staring at the canvas and thinking about what I do next. So I did edit out parts and I did speed up the whole video. And now I hope you enjoy, and if so, then please give me a thumbs up, leave a nice comment or share with your friends so that more people can see this video. Now take care until next time. Bye. Okay, here we go. I have already painted the background in a hot pink. I like to have hot pink as a first layer. For me, it makes the colors pop a little bit more, and I like if there are little tiny bits of hot pink showing through. I did start with some collage papers, my own mixed media jelly prints, but I also did use some handmade paper like from 2 years ago, where I did emboss them with some lace. I have to make a new batch this summer for sure, because I'm running out of those two-dimensional type of handmade papers. To glue down, I use a gel mat, and if you see me peeking backwards, I have a brand new wall easel thanks to my hobby. It just takes less space on the floor than a standard easel, so that's what we decided to do so that I get a little bit more room. I'm still getting used to my much smaller studio. I'm still fighting a little bit, but we're getting there. Next step is mark making. I did use mostly the woodies from Stabilo, those thick pencils, which are actually for children, but they work fine for mark making. And I probably also have used some oil-based charcoal just to get me started, getting acquainted with the canvas. Maybe they show in the end, maybe they don't. Here I already have started with the next layer for my background. As I mentioned, I do several layers until the final background layer. And I did use some leftover paints from another painting. I keep them in my Masters and Stay Wet palette, which really helps me to save a little bit those paints. It's always hard to get the right amount. Sometimes you have too much, sometimes you don't have enough, so you need another batch, and then it is too much again. But with this palette, I really can keep them for a while. Now for the paint I'm using, it is mostly Amsterdam acrylic paint. I do have a little bit of golden, I do have a little bit of Liquitex, but mostly I use acrylic paint. They are mostly soft bodies. I do have some colors also in their expert series, which would be a heavy body, but I actually prefer the soft bodies for my style of painting. I still get a lot of texture just by applying one layer on top of the other, so I don't need per se a heavy body. Color-wise, I have used some teal, some sienna raw, some white, some black, and then my mixture of gray. That's what I make myself with all my leftover paints. I just throw them in a little jar and mix them up until I get a gray. I do have a shorts video where I show what I do with my leftover paints, and I will link it first down below in the description, but also on the upper right corner. Now that another layer of background is finished, I start sketching in my two birds, my two crows, with the simple blackboard chalk. Now, of course, chalkboard doesn't stay. You can simply wipe it away, but I need to go along the lines with some black paint and a brush. Now, just to make it clear, it is just a rough sketch. It's just to give me an idea where the bird is about, where his features are. Doesn't mean that I paint exactly along the lines. And I know already that I don't need all the features. I want those birds to be a little bit disappearing into the background. So I know already I don't have to care about the legs or the feet of the birds. Now let's talk a little bit about inspiration. As I said, I knew already I wanted those birds to disappear a little bit into the background. And the reason for that is the place we live now, we do have just at the end of our backyard, we have forest and there are crows there. And because we are in an area where there is a lot of water, we do have a lot of fog. So that's what I have seen at one point, just parts of the crows. And because of the fog and the branches and all that stuff, the feet weren't actually visible. And I thought that would be a nice idea for a painting. Now, of course, there was no pink involved there, but that is artistic freedom. I just decided in the end that I'm gonna go for pink. So far, I have worked with what was left in the palette from another painting, but now it is time to pull in some colors. Here I'm using probably a cobalt blue, just to give those iridescent colors. It is always good not to have just black. So as always, it is applying color, going over again, just to give that depth and this kind of color which you can't have from the tube. Yes, I could mix the colors before on my palette, but I actually prefer mixing them right on the canvas. It just gives an other effect. Now I let you watch me with some music for a while. I will step in when there is something else going on than me just using acrylic paint. Here I started with my oil-based charcoal to refine the lines again a little bit, also to add a little bit extra lines. I just like that sketchy look, and because it's an oil-based charcoal, you also can smear it a bit, which I like. I also go in with the brush and some green color again, just to carve out the crows a little bit better. Now it is time for the new color, and it is from Amsterdam again. It is the Persian rose mixed with a little bit of gray, just to gray it out a little bit more. It is per se already a grayish pink, but I want it even a little bit more grayish, so I added a little bit of my mixture of gray. Now I'm using the spatula to apply the color. Because of the texture, it doesn't pick up everywhere. That's what I like about. And also I want sort of a rough texture. You can't mold it so easily like with the brush, so you have some imperfections, which I like. Now I don't keep this color just on the background. I also add some to the crows, just to melt everything together. And as always, I make sure that I have the main background color also on the sides of my paintings. That way you can hang it just like that on your wall without needing a frame. For me, this way of hanging a painting on a wall, it's just a little bit fresher than those heavy frames, but that is totally personal preference. People who buy the painting still can add a frame if they like. I make sure that I don't have anything important on the sides, just something a little bit of the same story, so to speak. Now just the pink color seemed a little bit too plain for me, so I decided to add also a little bit of purple, and of course I'm gonna also add it to the crows itself. From time to time I also switch to my brush to spread it out a little bit better, and then I go back to my spatula. And yes, sometimes I pick accidentally the wrong color, so I have to dab it off and paint over it. This time I did use the Sienna Natural. The red isn't completely gone, but it isn't so obvious. Now I'm starting with mark making again. This time I'm using a stencil and a greenish color to go over it. The stencil is my own stencil. I like to work with my own stencils. Occasionally I sell those stencils. I stopped selling A4 stencils, but if you really want it, then we can talk about it. I'm done with stenciling, but the leftover paint on my sponge I just apply to the canvas. For the white circles, I use my oil pastels from Sennelier, just to give a little bit something something. Those oil pastels are very soft and you can spread them easily with your fingers. Now I do switch between a white and a black oil pastel, just to give more details. Now my next step is applying some gold paint. It is from Amsterdam. It is the deep gold. They also do have a light gold, but I actually prefer the deep gold. I also use my fingers to apply a little bit of the gold to the embossed areas of my handmade paper. I try to add more details with my wax pencil, but it doesn't work if the paint is still wet, so I first had to dry it a little bit with the heat tool. And while I have my pencil still in my hand, I also do add a little bit of more mark making. Still correcting some details with the brush and the spatula. I could go on for ever and ever, but sometimes you have just to say it is enough.